Welcome to this explainer. Let's jump right into this. Today, we are looking at one of the absolute coolest character arcs in the Yaenddarr Chronicles. We're doing a deep dive into the sensory and mechanical brilliance of Celestia Frostwhisper's awakening. Specifically, we're zeroing in on that exact fraction of a second she manifests her very first frost-aligned power. Her abilities don't spark through a magic wand or some dusty spellbook, but through absolute razor-sharp emotional clarity. It is literally a masterclass in how environment and a character's internal state can fuse into magic.
The stakes of this entire magic system are perfectly captured in this single realization. Not her strength, not her fear, her clarity. On Yaenddarr, the terrain itself is sentient. I mean, it is quite literally judging her emotional state, not her combat prowess. You can't punch your way out of this environment, and you certainly can't panic your way out of it. The planet is reading her soul.
To contextualize this pivotal moment, we have to look at where she actually is in her journey. Her awakening is a structured, 5-part arc that spans across several distinct biomes. Right now, we're focusing squarely on Chapter 3, the Crucible, right in the middle of it all. She's already survived the Snow Dire Cat's judgment through pure presence, but she hasn't yet faced the really heavy, forgotten memories of her celestial lineage waiting in Chapter 4. So, this middle point, it's the ultimate pressure cooker. This is exactly where the spark happens.
So where exactly does this spark happen? Well, imagine stepping into a cavern so unnaturally cold that every single breath you take crystallizes instantly in the air right before your eyes. This is the Ice Fairy Hollow. It is walled entirely by translucent frost glass spires. And get this, these spires literally hum. They vibrate to create this cold, resonant melody, almost like a song of clarity. The whole environment is deliberately designed to strip away distraction and force absolute focus.
And then the melody stops. The air goes completely dead. Suddenly, that ambient guiding song just halts, and dozens of silent ice fairies descend from the ceiling, hovering in a perfect circle all around Celestia. The silence is incredibly heavy, and you know what it means. The test has officially begun.
The source material gives us this incredibly visceral description, releasing a wave of cold, so sharp it felt like a blade sliding across her skin. These are definitely not your typical friendly woodland sprites. These ice fairies have razor-thin frost glass wings, and their bodies glow with this pale blue light. They're silent, analytical guardians, and as Celestia's heartbeat quickens in response to them being there, the fairies react instantly by dropping the temperature even further. They're actively dialing up the pressure to see if she cracks.
Which brings us to the core conflict of the trial: panic versus presence. I mean, it's just human nature to freak out when the temperature drops to a lethal blade-like cold, right? But instead of panicking under this freezing pressure, Celestia does something extraordinary. She relies on the starlight shard resting in her chest, that very first gift the forest ever gave her. She places her hand over her heart, anchors herself to its steady pulse, and she exhales slowly. She chooses presence.
As soon as she stabilizes her breath and the shard brightens, boom, the cavern trembles. The environment violently escalates. Just as she passes the fairy's test of stillness, a massive crack races violently across the frost glass floor right beneath her feet. A surge of freezing air bursts upward, swirling into a literal miniature blizzard inside the cavern. The test isn't over, it's evolving.
Emerging from that crack in the floor, stepping right out of the miniature blizzard, is this apex sentinel, the ice dire wolf. Now, this isn't some pack animal. It's a singular crystalline beast sculpted entirely out of frost glass. It just radiates this cold intelligence. As it steps forward, frost literally spreads beneath its paws, creeping directly towards Celestia. It is pressing a suffocating aura of cold right against her chest.
And this brilliantly illustrates her profound character growth. In the face of this absolute apex predator, Celestia achieves perfect stillness. She doesn't run, she doesn't raise her hands to defend herself, she simply breathes. Notice how the narrative keeps our focus completely internal here. She doesn't have any physical weapons, she relies entirely on the sharp, focused, cold clarity stirring inside her rather than preparing for a physical fight. She's meeting the terrain completely on its own terms.
Then the tension finally snaps. The wolf lunges. This is the exact fraction of a second where the crushing external pressure meets her internal focus, and it forces her very first frost-aligned power out of her. It is the absolute climax of the trial in the hollow.
So, let's break down the mechanics of this awakening, step by step. First, you have the immense external threat. the lunging wolf. Second, absolute instinct. The text explicitly says she moves without thinking. Third, her internal state. That cold clarity the fairies forced her to find, it finally sparks. And finally, step 4, magical manifestation. Because she completely bypassed panicked thought, her honed emotional clarity is able to physically manifest as a weapon in the real world.
The visual described in the source is just absolutely stunning. A thin arc of shimmering cold that curved through the air like a crescent moon. A sweeping burst of frost erupts directly from her palm. It strikes the ground between her and the lunging wolf, instantly forming a solid wall of crystalline ice. She didn't chant a spell. She projected her internal state right into reality.
And the environment actually responds to this truth. The wolf skids to a halt, the ice wall gently dissolves back into mist, and the ice fairies above chime in this harmonious, beautiful sound of approval. The crystalline sentinel literally lowers its head, submitting to her newly proven power. She hasn't conquered the beast with brute force, she has completely synchronized with the terrain.
So, what should you really take away from this? Let's look at the traits of this newly awakened magic. This first frost-aligned power is 100% instinctive and entirely untrained. It is sparked exclusively by absolute emotional clarity, and physically, it leaves Frost clinging to her fingers, glowing with starlight. The absolutely crucial point here is that this isn't a refined, practiced ability. It is a raw, instinctual precursor to the legendary frostbow she is destined to eventually wield. It's the spark right before the flame.
Having finally proven her clarity, the trial of the Ice Fairy Hollow concludes. The cavern walls actually shift in part, revealing a new, narrow, incredibly steep passage. And this passage glows with a deeper, colder light. It is the path leading directly into the Winter Spirit Grove. The environment itself is ushering her forward.
Celestia survived the test of clarity. She literally turned her focused calm into a physical shield. But as she steps onto that glowing path toward her trial of memory in the Winter Spirit Grove, you have to wonder, will this fragile, newly awakened, first frost-aligned power hold up under the crushing weight of her own past and her celestial lineage? That is where her journey goes next, and it's a fascinating escalation. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the mechanics behind the magic.